Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Made for More podcast. Today we are talking about one of the hardest roles that any leader goes through, and I have the expert joining me today. Hello, Rebecca, and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Sally. Great to be here.
Absolutely wonderful. So, Rebecca, tell us a little bit about you. Where did you come from? Where are you going?
Great question. I'm, as you might be able to hear by my accent, originally from the UK and came to Australia 20 years ago by way of Africa, the Middle East, Cyprus, and America. So I'm a bit of an all-rounder. So some people really find the accent quite hard to pick, but not over on this side of the world. It's definitely a UK accent. And I've actually lived here in Melbourne the whole 20 years. So unlike many backpackers, and I was the oldest backpacker in town when I came here, I didn't go to Sydney first. Melbourne was always where I was going to head to.
I love it. What drew you to Melbourne, do you think?
The people, the culture, the landscape of things to experience.
Mhm.
Absolutely amazing. I also, in my complete ignorance, honestly thought the whole country looked like the Whitsundays. So when I first arrived in the horrible, very, very rainy, cold weather and realized that I maybe should have parked a bit further north, but then I
Yeah.
fell in love with it really, really quickly. So never changed my mind.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And most people are assuming there's kangaroos jumping down the road and koalas everywhere. And I'm in the Sunshine Coast and I was dropping the kids off at school the other day and there was a kangaroo bouncing along the footpath driving on. This is so Australian. Oh, I love it. How iconic. So that was 20 years ago. You're in Melbourne. What are you working on now? What's your passion piece? Tell us a little bit about your area of expertise.
Yeah, great. Well, look, I mean, essentially, I'm a mentor, but what I'm really known for is building B-suite leaders with C-suite impact. So, what that actually means is working with middle managers and their employers to
Hmm.
make sure that we're really realizing the potential that we need from this group. It's a bit of a funny group to be obsessed with, and I am a bit obsessed with them. I think it came from a couple of experiences earlier in my career when I, moved up through the ranks and made horrible mistakes and was a really ghastly middle manager. So sacked myself a couple of times, and then became a manager of middle managers and started to really see the world from a different perspective. So uh, I had quite a few experiences as a middle manager that got me interested in that. And then when I came to Australia Post in my executive role there, where I was the head of talent and careers, um, one of the things that I really started to spot was this funny pattern with middle managers that nobody was talking about. And I think it got its hooks into me. The thing with middle managers is that everything hinges on them. So
Mm,
our ability to implement transformation, change culture, drive performance, engagement, the list goes on, hinges on middle managers.
mm.
And yet we don't invest in them. So I was lucky enough at Post to own the responsibility for some pretty huge workforce transformation agendas and quite a significant investment in the people that were pivotal to making it happen. And as I was looking at my L&D budget, I realized that we were looking at something like 5% spent.
Mm.
And I was looking at my change champion profiles, and we were looking at more like 70 to 80%.
Yeah.
So the
Mm.
maths didn't add up for
The
me.
math
And
ain't
I think
mathing.
that was it. That was the hook. And I've been stuck on it ever since.
Oh, I love it. So you mentioned, the tricky thing and the pattern that happens with middle managers. What is it that you noticed first at Australia Post? And now, I mean, I'm assuming, and you and I talked briefly about this before, it's still happening now. Like it's not an old news, old problem. It is, old news, current problem. What is the pattern that you're noticing when it comes to middle managers?
Look, middle managers are carrying a couple of big burdens. So, big burden number one, I think, is their reputation. Let's face it, everyone likes to everyone loves to hate them, right?
Mhm.
There are no other members of the workforce that we create films about and comedy series about and cartoons about in the AFR. And we bash our middle managers, the Office, Dilbert. We love to hate them. They are the butt of social jokes. So their reputation, as we all know, precedes you. Their reputation is actually a massive chain around their necks. It is holding them back. It is very difficult to be better than something that everybody is so amused by.
Mhm.
So reputation is a big one. Um, Another one that I think has been lingering for years, because you're quite right, this is not new. Middle managers have been eye-rolling material for decades, is the definition of middle managers. So most people in the HR world, a lot of very, very senior leaders will absolutely have heard this line that managers manage and leaders lead. Mm-hmm. That there is a distinct difference between those who are in charge of getting the work done and those who are in charge of setting the vision and making the decisions. Mm-hmm. Now, that frame actually was created, and you wouldn't believe this, it's really old, 1977.
1977, that's only 30 years ago, right?
But 1977, and if we think about how business has changed since 1977.
Yeah, amazing.
We didn't even have emails, for heaven's sake. There weren't even computers in the office.
I think there was very rarely women in the workplace then too. So
only as secretaries, unmarried secretaries. Yes, exactly. So if we think that that construct can still be applicable in today's business landscape, that's a chronic definition issue. And we all fall into it. You hear it all the time. You know, the leaders are going for strategic offsites. The executive does this and the middle managers do that. But actually, if you really sit down and ask your executives, what are their biggest complaints about their middle managers? They will say things like, they're not being strategic enough.
Yep.
They're not influential enough.
Yep.
They're not taking accountability and making the right decisions often enough. But these are the things that leaders do, not managers. So we're expecting them to move into being more like mini executives.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And yet we're still defining them based on this 1977 construct that they are operational administrators. So that definition bit, it's a big problem. And then the last one, which is quite new, is how we are training them. So the whole education of middle managers isn't working. The way that we choose to develop our middle managers is very much in the attitude and the mindset and using the same methodologies as our frontline leaders, who get loads of investment, by the way, in their education. But our middle managers, we're still kind of training them like they're first-time managers. And most middle managers get a bit naffed off at that, to be honest, because they're pretty seasoned leaders. They've been doing this for some time. Yeah. They're also incredibly busy. They really don't need to go through all the models and the stuff. Yeah. So again, when we think about how we develop our middle managers, that education piece is really lacking. It's not hitting the mark. And you know it because loads of execs will tell you that they don't think they're getting any return on investment in their leadership programs. And that's a tell. That's a tell. The fact that they're investing but not getting return means that we're not training them right. We're not educating them the right way. So those are probably the big three, right? The reputation, the definition, and the education.
Yep.
None of those things are working in their favor right now.
You know what? I 100% agree. I didn't realize that the construct of managers manage and leaders lead was from 1977. And when we start going, hang on a minute, there is so much that has changed since then. Not only workforces, but also the environment, the economic landscape. Even the work that we're doing is so different to what it was way back then in 1977. When you're talking about some of the education that middle managers are receiving, and they're kind of getting like the first time leader or frontline leader extension model, and then there's quite a big jump between the middle manager and the executive training / coaching, which we see happening with more of that C-suite exec level. What do you think would be, I guess, the future of, or what would be the fundamental parts that middle managers are needing in terms of education right now?
Yeah, you make a really, really good point. The gap is there. When you're a new manager, you do need to be kind of sheep dipped. Everyone needs to come out the same, right? It's okay. That's not a bad thing. And when you're a senior executive, you want that hyper personalization, the very, very white glove, high touch approach, because you're high risk yourself. So that's required. In the middle, where there's too many of them for the white glove version, it's too expensive. Yeah. But they can't be doing with going through the sheep dip version. That's too insulting. So they are in this sort of no man's land, this gray area in the middle. So the things that I advise my clients to really do is to leverage what you've got available. So the first thing that a lot of my clients are starting to lean into is exposing them to what good looks like. Once you make a decision that what you really want is for your middle managers to operate more like you, the exec, right? If only they could make the same decisions I would make if I was doing the job. If only they could influence people the way I would influence them if I was doing the job. So if that's in your head, then really good news. What they need to do is see you in your job doing those things.
Yeah.
So some really targeted work shadowing and some exposure to what good looks like. And you are the gold standard. So it's you that we want to be shadowing. So thinking about that, that's a zero cost, easy fix. So they might come along to a board meeting. They might come and watch how the executive committee makes decisions on business cases. They might just come and hear the arguments and the way people debate and influence each other and how those decisions are finally reached. So they start understanding that higher level of thinking in action rather than reading it on a page, in theory. So that would be my first suggestion. Easy to do, zero effort or cost. The next one I think is really to empower them more, and the word empower is kind of on my blacklist a little bit because we sort of overused it a couple of years ago.
Authentic empowering, I think, is what
is that. Yes. Right. I think there's a big misunderstanding of what empowerment really means, and weirdly enough there's two dictionary definitions of empowerment. They are quite different.
Right.
So what I mean by empowerment is the actual giving of power and authority. So allowing your middle managers to make decisions, to sign things off, to have a modest budget. A lot of middle managers don't have any of those things. So then when we complain that they're not stepping up and being more accountable, actually we're not really empowering them to. We're using the other dictionary definition, which is feel more empowered. It's like, yeah, they feel it, but they're not actually permitted to do it. A lot of leaders who have courage at that executive level will give them room to play in low stakes environments to practice that decision making and that capability so they can step up. But you actually have to give them power so they can practice using power. Unfortunately, again, otherwise it's just a theoretical exercise. So that one can be quite big and quite scary. And to be honest, most C-suites avoid that one. That's a real blind spot.
I do think budgeting and anything to do with the financial part of middle management becomes a bit of a black box, doesn't it? It's a bit secretive and everything's a little bit loose and no one really knows, and we better not sign off on it, and it needs to go through iteration after iteration after iteration. So I think you've hit the nail on the head there, is give them some responsibility and authority to make and, safely make it.
That's right. And that's why I say give it to them in a low stakes way. Put them in, in sandboxes where if they make a mistake, it's not going to explode. We're not talking tens of millions of dollars. Give them a $20,000 delegation of authority. And if they stuff it up completely, it's 20 grand. But that's how people learn at this level. They have to learn by doing. They're not going to learn by listening. They have to see it, they have to touch it, they have to feel it. And you're quite right. The whole budget process stresses out middle managers beyond belief. It's actually not rocket science. It's just completely invisible to them.
Yes.
So that exposure, that empowerment, let them see it, let them do it, I think is really, really important. And the last one that, again, is quite easy is let them learn from their peers.
Yes.
Quite often we feel responsible for our direct reports and they must learn from me, but sometimes I can't remember how I do something, or I don't know when I learned it. I just do. But actually learning from peers is really, really valuable. And again, seasoned leaders who have been around the traps for a while, sharing their tips, their ideas, their techniques, their mistakes is really valuable. And I would expand that to beyond not just their team, beyond their team within your company, and even beyond the walls of your company. So we talk a lot about the power of networks, and most people cringe horribly when we talk about networks in the middle management space. Actually, what we're really talking about is peer-to-peer learning opportunities. They love them. They think they won't. And when they first go in, they're really shy about it, but they love them. And then you start bringing back such richness and diversity of ideas. You'll see them skyrocket in their capability. And again, without you putting a single dollar out of your pocket.
Yeah. Do you know, I think it's a really interesting space. When I work with that particular cohort, that kind of middle management cohort, very rarely do they recognize that, one of their teams is actually the rest of the cohort that's in the same, going through the exact same things as what they are, the same experiences. And when we break down that framing and they go, actually, I've got some friends in the room and they do start networking and they do start bouncing ideas off each other. I think what I've noticed is for some of those middle managers is they have kept a lot of it, kind of close, their cards close to their chest because they can't complain about their team. They can't complain about their team leaders because who's going to listen? And if they're saying, "Hey, I'm not coping to whoever is above them," then that could potentially, as you mentioned earlier, have a big impact on their reputation or perhaps how they're being perceived. And then they very much are alone in their leadership journey. But when we bring them together, they go, "Hang on." Everyone's going through this. How do we either come up with a solution or have a safe place to go, hang on, I'm really choking here and struggling a little bit. And it does absolutely skyrocket some of the results that we can see and the innovation that's happening. And yeah, it's a really wonderful piece to bring them together.
It's a beautiful observation, Ali, because one of the things that might surprise people to know is that mid-level leaders have the worst confidence out
Yes.
of anybody at work. So more than 50% of mid-level leaders have quite a chronic confidence issue. And you're absolutely right. They hide it, they fake it till they make it, they do all the terrible stuff that undermines their authenticity and is quite a lot of effort
Mm,
because they are lonely.
yeah.
And that loneliness breeds disengagement, breeds burnout, all the things we're trying to avoid. So
Yeah.
creating that connection, that expansion of who's in the same boat as me has
Yeah.
remarkable effects on their confidence and their turn up level. Um, and it gives them the reassurance that it might not be them, it
Yeah.
might just be the job. The job is hard. Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think for middle managers, what I see most of the time is, we talked earlier about the front line, they kind of have this sheep dip, here's the way, here's the process. You start at, A and then you finish on D and, here's option one and option two there. Well, for our middle managers, because there isn't a defined way, they are very much muddling their way through. And if you've had a great manager, leader before, like, who you report to or historically, then I think the journey's a lot easier. If they are one of those middle managers that perhaps hasn't had a great relationship historically, or their leader might be disengaged, or, hey, they were a really high performing SME, I'll leave them to it. They'll be a great performer. All of a sudden, they're leading a little bit rudderless, and I think that can be a risk as well. To go, hang on, I don't know what I'm doing. What's my job again? I'm not sure. And there is that level of vulnerability to put your hand up and say, "Help, help me, help me." So when we're going through all of this, I mean, I think there's absolutely a strong need to go, how do we support middle managers? You've recently written a book. It is everywhere. Tell us a little bit about your book that you've written.
It is everywhere. I keep getting text messages with people spotting it in the wild, which is beautiful. So, so lovely. There's a lot of excitement about it. And it actually sold out for a moment on Amazon, which I don't think I've ever seen before. So I'm going to take that as a good sign.
I would.
So it's only been out a couple of weeks. It's called More Impact, More Easily. And it's really designed for middle managers to help them have a toolkit at the ready for all of the 12 most common scenarios that face middle managers, whether that's managing that crisis of confidence, managing up, whether it's influencing a stakeholder, whether it's being more productive, writing a strategy, whatever it is.
Yeah,
There are 12 scenarios that most commonly crop up for middle managers that catch them out.
I love it.
So this is the kind of the instant reference guide to not getting caught out next time.
Brilliant. And we'll put the links for that as well, so that people can grab a copy because it sounds like a really great resource to be able to go, hang on, let me just check my middle manager Bible. So what do you think have middle managers need to have on their radar? And I think a big part of, this development is they do need to drive it by themselves, and not necessarily wait to be hand selected or tapped on the shoulder to say, by the way, we've noticed you need some training. What do you think we're going to be seeing as the shift in the leadership landscape? We know that AI is everywhere. I do think that this year is going to be kind of the make or break for many leaders. Either you're on board and being active, or it's still a concept for you, in which case by next year you'll probably be left behind. What is some of the realities that you think we're going to be seeing in the next 12 months when it comes to this particular cohort and group?
Yeah. Look, this particular cohort and group, you're really picking on quite a pertinent point there. The reason that we actually created the language of the B-suite was because we needed to distinctly define old school middle managers from future school middle managers.
Ah, yeah.
So that's really where it comes from. So if I call you a middle manager, I'm not being polite, right? It's not a compliment. A lot of people think I'm here to save middle managers. I'm not. I'm actually here to develop a new version.
Yeah.
Because I do believe the robots are coming for the old school middle manager's job, and quite right too. If what they love to do is control, traffic direct, report, inform, monitor, AI is going to do it a million times better. There's no value there for a human anymore. If, however, what they do is control the pace of work, so they're really thinking about what's the important work, what's not going to get done, negotiating expectations constantly in that space. If they're going to be working on thinking things through really strategically, seeing those enterprise patterns to help them prioritize things in the right order, and if they're going to work 80% of their time on influencing other people, whether it's their team, their peers, their boss, doesn't matter. That's the stuff that AI can't do. And that's the heartland of a B-suite leader. In fact, that's pretty much all they should do once AI meets its expectation capacity, or once it actually meets its potential. And I think, to your point, it's not there yet. It's not there yet. So we're still doing all of that. B-suite leaders, people who are really adopting that new way of operating as a leader, cannot wait for AI to turn up and take all that management rubbish away. Middle managers are terrified of AI. That's a big difference.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? And I just wanted to point out a comment that you made just then around, when this does happen, 80% of the time will be around influencing, controlling the flow of work. And I think for so many that are in that Malcolm in the middle space, that is a very new concept of going, hang on, but what's my output going to be? Where's my work worth if my job now becomes, outside of KPIs or measurable data or measurable, I guess, output and what you're actually doing week in, week out?
Yeah, it feels tough, but actually the answer is in your boss's scorecard. Like, how do we measure our executive? And we would expect our executive to be the people actually pressing the buttons and making the things work. It's how they knit it all together. It's how they prioritize it. It's how they communicate it, engage people on it, and make decisions to do the right things at the right times that drive the right outcomes. If we can clone that and put it in the middle at scale, then effectively we've built B-suite leaders with C-suite impact. That is our mission. But yes, it is completely different. It's a completely different definition, and it comes back to that old school definition. We cannot have the same position descriptions, the same scorecards, the same KPIs, and expect them to operate like mini executives in the middle of an organization. We just can't. So the definition is critical.
Yeah. What do you think is, maybe either the most important thing or perhaps the top three things that some of these execs need to be thinking about to support their middle managers, so that this transition is easier, or perhaps going, now that I've listened to Rebecca, actually, our 5% budget on our middle managers needs to have a good looking over. What do you think is, the top most important thing, the three top most important things? Perhaps there's a fourth one. You tell me.
Oh, look, I mean, I'm not going to go for the great big list, because that's one of the big holes we fall in when we go to middle management. Here's 52 things that you must learn as a middle manager. We've got to keep it simple. I think most organizations are doing some of the 9 factors that we look at quite well. So they're either managing that reputation issue quite nicely, and that might be that they've got that brand reset under control. They're really celebrating their middle managers and the importance of their middle managers. Or they've got their reward mechanism under control, so they've understood that they are motivated differently. So promotion isn't always the answer. In fact, only the answer for about 14% of them.
Mm-hmm.
So some organizations are really getting that right. If you think that your organization isn't getting that right, if when we say middle managers in your organization, everyone rolls their eyes and kind of goes, oh yeah, we could just skip that, right? We could just do without them. Then you've got a brand issue that you've got to unpick before they can be the leader you want them to be.
Yeah.
Some organizations are really starting the journey on the definition piece, and that's huge because since 1977, the job of middle manager has kind of just become this kind of graveyard for all the things that are not executive jobs and not individual contributor jobs.
Love it. Yep.
In the middle. We've got to unpick that. We've got to go fresh piece of paper. What do I actually want my middle managers to deliver? What data do I have to prove where they are, where they need to be? And what's the design of their job? What do they need? One of the aspects that's coming out loud and clear is they need a dedicated AI companion. If you want them to have bigger direct report teams and you want them to spend more time coaching those teams and you want them to spend more time influencing up and building strategy packs with you, then you have got to make space in their life and take away the admin burden. And at the moment, we don't have a perfect manager companion developed out of AI. We've got lots of things that one might use, but there's not enough specificity in terms of a thing that you can use, a designed companion. And unfortunately, that's going to depend on each company. It's not going to be something off the shelf, right? That defined companion would release so much capacity, up to 51%, apparently, according to Gartner. 51% of a manager's job is doing admin.
Right.
So, if we look at productivity and we look at creating capacity in our more senior leaders, that feels like a no-brainer, a very specific AI companion that targets their admin burden. Get that done, and then there's nowhere for them to hide, right? There's no excuses for them not to apply that space for influence and development and all those good things. So those would be probably the two areas that I would focus on most. I think the education, how we educate them comes second, because until you've got their reputation in the right space and you've got their definition in the right space, there's kind of no point educating them because you haven't decided what you want them to be yet.
Yeah. Amazing. Where do you like to hang out if people are wanting to find out a little bit more about this, Rebecca, or perhaps there's some middle managers going, yes, I should probably forward this on, or we might have some savvy execs that are saying, hey, now that I've heard this, I do need to find out a little bit more for my middle managers. Where is your platform of choice?
Where do I play? So I'm a LinkedIn girl through and through. So come and find me on LinkedIn.
Yep.
Just Rebecca Houghton. Or pop along to the website and you can, have a chat with me there, and that's boldhr.com.
boldhr.com. We'll put that into the show notes. Do you have any final words of encouragement before we say goodbye?
Oh gosh, words of encouragement. I think words of encouragement, if you are a middle manager, stop being a middle manager, start being a B-suite leader. Otherwise, the robots are coming for your job. And I think a word of encouragement, if you are an employer of middle managers, the one biggest lever that I think you can pull is get the gap between your expectations of what AI can do for middle managers versus the reality of what it does do at the moment. If you can close that gap, you will release capacity in your middle managers to do the job of a B-suite leader.
Brilliant. I love it. Thank you so much for joining me today and for sharing your expertise. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.